on that point, there's a guy that everyone is finally turning on. It took them years too late. And the reason why this is a perfect transition, believe it or not, because when you read this article, I got a free article, New York Times. So I made sure I read this.
This your one free one, huh?
Yeah. See, look, enjoy. Look at this. Got the free article here.
Enjoy it, sucker. That's what they say, Nick. It says, "Enjoy it, sucker." Say that.
Israel's war against Hamas. Sanders faced a backlash from the left. The New York Times is talking about it now. The progressive disappointment with the Vermont senator, a liberal icon, reflects a broader divide among Democrats over this war. Now, I want to get your thoughts on Bernie in general, Margaret. But on the point we were just talking about, if you read, I read the entire article. So there's a point here. I wonder if I can find it quickly, where you have progressive apologists for Bernie who was interviewed in the New York Times article as well. Where they were like people like Fahad Fakir, a lot of these progressive people, professional managerial class people who were trying to like explain why Bernie's doing it. They would say, yeah, we don't like that Bernie's doing this, but he's doing it because of this. And Bernie is part of the scumbag that we was talking about. Because you know what they mentioned? They said that October 7th particularly shook Bernie. I can't find it right now, but I can find the passage in the article here soon. I might clip it on my Twitter while I have this up. They said the events of October 7th shook Bernie Sanders to his core because he had family members who died in the Holocaust. So because he had family members who died in the Holocaust, October 7th reminded him of that. So now he wanted to genocide the Palestinians. As disgusting as it gets, right? He's weaponizing the fact that his father's side of his family died in the Holocaust to justify why he don't want a ceasefire and is okay with thousands of children dying. But sorry, I went off a little bit. Go ahead, Margaret.
Well, let's not forget a couple of things. He lived on a kibbutz in the early 60s.
Yeah, they mentioned that as well.
Yeah, so let's not forget that. And if you remember from his campaign, what he said that was allegedly supportive of Palestine was so mild, it was like Palestinians deserve respect or something like that. And usually politicians, if anybody running for president ignores Palestinians, so people are like, oh, he said Palestinians deserve respect. And I was like, what the hell is that? That's nothing. But we see the real Bernie, a company guy who likes Joe Biden, who provides cover for Joe Biden in every other way. Biden can break a railroad strike. He goes along with it. All these things that Mr. Progressive is supposed to be against, he ends up going along with. And in this, he said everything except should be a ceasefire. I'm sorry about the civilian deaths. Israel needs to do better, blah, blah, blah. Everything except what should be said. So Bernie is... he's been dead to me for a while, and all he has done is confirm the rightness of my conclusions about him. This is the time to stand up.
And so this is what you mentioned before. Oh, sorry, Murray. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay, so Mr. Sanders, sorry, I can't see you guys when I have this up, who is Jewish and spent time in kibbutz. This is what you just mentioned earlier before. That's what they brought up here. But now this is what I want to mention before. Because once again, the people who use this, I find despicable. If you guys think Norman Finkelstein was mean to that crocodile tears person, I find it even more. I find it just as I won't say even more, but just as reprehensible when people do this. Because Fahid Shakir, I believe he was like the campaign manager of Bernie Sanders. I remember
something like that. Something like high level. Yeah, something like that.
Actually, I'll read his entire statement for the sake of this segment. I won't, because the whole article is long. They got all these people kind of apologizing for Bernie. A few people who rip into Bernie who say it's disappointing. And remember, these are people of the professional managerial class. Like those are the only people that the New York Times acknowledge at the left. They're not talking about like the grassroots, like the RBNs, not even like the Black Agenda reports, right? But anyway, I'll just read his comments so you guys see what he said. Fayez Shakir, an advisor to Mr. Sanders, who served as his campaign manager, yep, I was right, said the clash between the senator and some of his supporters come from a natural tension between a movement leader and a political leader that has dodged Mr. Sanders throughout his career. The easiest thing for Bernie Sanders to do would to be just to say something to make the activists happy. You guys see how the professional managerial class thing? That is not what Bernie should do. Just say something to make us happy? Y'all see their mindset? That was my first thought when I read that. Why would you say that? No, what Bernie needs to do is be on the right side of history, not doing a better job managing our fucking feelings. But anyway, let me continue. And the fact that he's not is indicative of how sincerely he approaches this issue in particular. That's why my opinion on this when I read Fahed Shakir was he was apologizing for Bernie. Like, he was horrible. Like, he tried to sound reasonable, like, y'all, I don't agree with him, but he apologizing for him. Do anyone want to chime in before I finish? I can't see you guys, so anyone want to chime in?
Just saying, this is just this level, like, I love and hate what's happening. I love it because it's exposing so much of the strategy and these ideas from these people and all the things they told us. Like they said, oh, we're down with third parties until Cornel West started running. Oh, we're down with Palestinians until now. It's like, until it happens, always in theory, they're that, until it actually is a concrete thing. But I think Margaret also wanted to chime in before we go back.
Yeah, I just want to say these, people get these positions because they're apologists. That's how you get to be Bernie's campaign manager. That's how you get to have a gig on MSNBC or a podcast or get the support of the Democrats. You get that because you're an apologist, because you're not going to make waves, because you're not going to oppose the narrative. That's why people like that have the positions they have, because they are going to curry favor at every turn. So we should not be surprised that someone who worked on Bernie's campaign is still a little lapdog. We shouldn't be surprised. That's the position they hold. We at the Black Agenda Report, we call them the Black Misleadership class. But apparently there's a lot of misleadership classes. There's a Muslim misleadership class and an Arab misleadership class and a Latino.
They have them all.
they got to buy up all these people for their pretend big tent. But as you pointed out that it's not about Bernie's feeling. Bernie's struggling. Oh, he's upset. Or who cares? He's a senator. He's a United States senator. He's in a position to say there needs to be a ceasefire, and the U.S. has to change its relationship with Israel. That's his job, not pretend concern.
Look at this mealy-mouthed bullshit here, and the New York Times considered this scathing criticism. Like, and I think Fahed Shakir, the best one to show you guys is somewhat everyone was saying, because this is like what most of the people were saying, and he in particular caught my interest when I read it. Like, dude, this piece of shit. Look at this part. It's an affirmation that Bernie Sanders doesn't come to these things with political positioning in mind. He's actually struggling with the moral dimensions of this.
That's nonsense. He's not struggling with anything. And this is the time to be political. He's a senator. He's not a clergyman. He's not a philosopher. He's a senator. So he's supposed to be political. I don't know why that's seen as some sort of a compliment to say that a senator isn't being political.
And that is bullshit, because he definitely is. But he definitely is too. That's the thing. Do anyone want to believe that Bernie Sanders don't see the moral problems with killing a record amount of children per day? He does, but he can't stand against AIPAC and Israel. They made a devil's bargain. We explained this on the RBN. Progressives and social democrats made a devil's bargain that they would team up with liberals and neocons on foreign policy under the hopes of getting crumbs on domestic policies. That's Bernie Sanders' politics. So Bernie Sanders is willing to support Zionism, Israel, so he doesn't get destroyed, so he can hopefully give you some domestic shit that doesn't happen.
So we don't get. Did we get crumbs?
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't even get. We were supposed to be $2,000, and it was like, well, you already got $600, so you get $1,400. That equals $2,000. And it was, can we raise the minimum wage? No. Can we have Build Back Better? Actually, no. And that's Manchin and Sinema's fault. Somebody else's fault, not Joe Biden's fault. The railroad workers go on strike. What does a progressive do? Well, you help crush the strike, of course. So this idea of compromise is just acquiescing. That's all it is. The word compromise implies that you've made a demand, that you stand for something, that you horse trade. Well, you'll give me this and then I get that. And but they just give in and they call it compromise and they call it, moral torment or whatever it is they're trying to say.
That's an
But
important point because
Relational harm.
that is a very important point to add to what I was saying, because I want you guys to know that even that their devil's bargain that they make is a failure, because it's not like they support imperialism. We got healthcare, you know what I mean? So
yes.
what they do is a failure on face value too. So it just show how ridiculous they are. But I'm gonna read this part here, and then CJ, I'll pass to you. You can do the next segment or two, because I want Margaret and I want CJ to even respond to what Bernie's saying. Like, I've been reading his statements, and it's as unhinged as Lindsey Graham, as we were showing you guys earlier. It just, Bernie doesn't say it in, like, the right wing, like, malicious attitude, for the lack of a better term. You know how, like, Republicans say this, they would say Joe Biden's immigration policy, but they would say it in a fucked up way. You know what I mean? Bernie is saying the same thing Lindsey Graham said earlier, but he's saying it in a more calculated, progressive way. Now, listen to this. Hamas had made it absolutely clear before and after October 7th that their goal is the destruction of Israel and the perpetual warfare to achieve that end. Now, he's saying that in opposition of the ceasefire, which is the argument that Lindsey Graham was making. They are in lockstep with this issue, and this is me listening to Rokan and Bernie. They would just say it differently, fam. Like, Lindsey and the right, they would be like completely evil, like Palestinians are garbage. But Bernie would say the same thing they say. We can't have a ceasefire because we can't let Hamas exist. Now, this is the last part I want to read. I'll pass to you, CJ, after Margaret reaction, because this is what prompted me to move this segment up a little bit. This is disgusting. This is when Mr. Shakir said the Hamas attack was personally jarring for Mr. Sanders. But so the year 2022 being one of the most deadliest years in Palestinian history, that's not jarring for you, Bernie? Thousands of kids being bombed is not jarring, Bernie? Now, they say this as it's a moral virtue. This is going to bail us out. No, I view this as reprehensible. Like, it's a backfire.
It's a moral failing.
Yep.
It's absolutely a moral failing. And, so they allegedly quote a Hamas leader who says there's a permanent state of war with Israel. Well, hello, what's wrong with being in a permanent state of war with a country that's practicing genocide? It is international law. You have the right to self-defense. The Palestinian people have a right to self-defense. And so, yes, there is a war. There's war being waged on them. So they have, as a right of self-defense, they have a right. And I want to say something else about what happened on October 7th. The Israelis killed a lot of those people.
Yes.
It's something that has not been. Now, you could say if Hamas had never attacked, it wouldn't have happened. Oh, okay, you can say that. But in their response, Israeli tanks shelled people's homes. They talked about people were burned to death by Israeli tanks. And this is something that we should have all the facts. You can conclude what you want from those facts, but to act as though Hamas deliberately burned people in their homes when it was and they've interviewed some of these young, inexperienced people who were operating these tanks, and they said, well, is it civilians? Their commanders told them, shoot anyway, go ahead and shoot. And that's why a lot of those people are dead. And we are not supposed to know that. The corporate media help. They don't tell us any of that. Give us all the information. Give us all the facts. Let us reach the conclusion you want. You might conclude that you still hate Hamas. All right, somebody might. That's okay. But then you at least know the truth. So when they say they're like Nazis and they kill Jews just because they want to kill Jews, that's a lie. It isn't true.
All loss of life is saddening. I gotta be careful when I talk about October 7th, not to get us in trouble. But you guys understand, when people said Hamas invaded Israel on October 7th, that's a lie. That's occupied Palestinian land. You can't invade yourself. So it's very sad when innocent people die, but those are human shields used by Israel because they are unwilling participants. Well, a lot of them are willing participants, but let's say the children and anyone who was a victim, they are human shields unwilling participants of a settler colonial hot war going on between the colonizer versus the people fighting for their land. I will not accept the premise that Hamas invaded Israel, and that will get me in trouble. I know it will.
Well,
But go
and
ahead, Margaret.
also I'm glad you pointed that out. Under international law, Israel cannot claim a right to self-defense in occupied territory. That's not self-defense. It isn't. It just isn't. And I don't want, and I just want to amplify what you just said. I don't want anybody to die. Nobody has to die.
No.
If the U.S. were an honest broker, nobody would have died on October 7th. Nobody would have died since then. If the U.S. did the right thing, if the U.S. wanted to peacefully coexist with the rest of the world and didn't insist on domination, nobody would be dead. So I consider these previous attacks on Gaza under other presidents, Obama and other presidents, all of it is the fault of the U.S. The U.S. could put a stop to all of it, but doesn't want to, because the U.S. and Israel are on the same page. And that's the other thing. I don't want to just demonize Israel. Whatever they do with U.S. permission.
Absolutely. And this is the last part I'll read, and I'll pass to you, CJ, because this is why it's so ridiculous. I don't accept the fucking bullshit premise that we got to condemn Hamas. I don't. I'm not pushing that on anyone. I'm just telling you guys what I believe. So, and this is what Bernie believes here. When this is what Fahir Shakir says. As a deeply committed progressive person that Bernie is, he finds it impossible to advocate for trusting a decidedly unprogressive Hamas. You guys see how following the thought process of believing every enemy of the empire leads to war? It goes against peace when you believe Hamas is evil, because if you do truly believe that, then why not follow the train of thought that Bernie has? You can't trust these evil demons. You can't trust Putin, who's an evil demon. You can't trust Nicolas Maduro, who's an evil demon. Like, if you follow that train of thought, that's why I reject it. Because if you follow that train of thought, you will never have peace.
Also, I want to say this about you can't trust Hamas. You can't talk to Hamas. Well, even if that's true, what's happened traditionally in diplomacy is if A can't talk to B, you bring in C. That's what's happened with the prisoner swap. With Qatar has played this role. So if Israel can't talk to Hamas, you talk to somebody else who can talk to Hamas. So it's a lie. It's a lie meant to shut us up. It's a lie meant to continue this awful policy. You demonize someone, and then you say, well, there's no one for us to talk to. And every time Palestinians do try to talk, what do? They're assassinated. They're imprisoned. People have been imprisoned for years. They say, well, there's no Palestinian peacemaker. That's not true. When Palestinians speak up, they're crushed. They destroy people's homes. Collective punishment is a war crime. By definition, in the Geneva Conventions, Israel will blow up somebody's house. It's like a TV show broadcasted. We blew up his house. We blew up his house. So I think all of this is being exposed. I think if people knew just a little bit about what Israel does, Israel would have no support in the country among the people. Would have absolutely none.
With that point, I'll pass to you, CJ. Just on that point, I've covered a poll before, and I'll pass right to you, CJ, on this. I covered a poll before. It was like a year and a half ago. It was a long time ago. It was a very long segment ago, where it was like 75% of Democratic voters had no idea what Joe Biden's Israel policy was. And the premise of the poll, and I got dick for it. We don't got time for it, but I reported on it where it's like most people support Democrats when they don't know their Israel policy. But then when they learn what their Israel policy, even like liberals turn against it. Just to that point. But anyway, CJ, I'll pass to you for your next few segments here. Go ahead, CJ.
Yeah, no, just to add though to this, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to tie all of these together because I mean they're literally together. So I'm going to add a little bit to Bernie, but it leads into the AIPAC story, which leads into our government being owned by Zionists. It's really just step by step. So just to add to this, just the headline: Bernie, the left face of genocide. That's where I got the title. And it's funny, Nick, you brought this story and we didn't have any idea that we both were going to cover this. I already had this set, but I do want to just end the segment with this part that they say in this article. And to your point, Nick and Margaret, everybody's calling out Bernie Sanders. This article is not even a day old, not even 24 hours old, but I'll read this. It says the defense of Israeli onslaught was welcomed by the war criminals and their accomplices. White House Deputy Communications Director Herbie Zeskine, I think that's how you said, tweeted out quotes from Sanders' interview. Within an hour of Sanders' appearance, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, otherwise known as AIPAC, posted a clip of his remarks on X. In a subsequent tweet, the Zionist lobby said, "Thank you, Senator Sanders, for your clear and principled opposition to calls for ceasefire with Hamas."
That's a career lowlight. That's a lowlight that ever existed.
That'll be, I mean, I don't want to give any analogies. I was just about to do what they do in corporate media all the time, but this is not a good thing for AIPAC to be calling you out.